Subjuntivo. Here we go. Irregular forms include these verbs: dar, ir, ser, haber, estar, and saber. In all these verbs, they have a constant core. For dar, this includes d plus a, amos, as, n. Accent marks are placed over the yo form and the el, ea, usted form, but not the vosotros form. For ir, there is a constant core of vay plus as, amos, ais, on. This verb follows the regular rules after the vi part of the verb is applied. For ser, there is an se followed by as, amos, ais, on. For haber, there is an I plus regular forms of AR present tense verbs. Both ser and haber follow the regular rules after the core part is applied. For estar, there is an est plus aasa, amos, as, n. And notice that there are accents on all forms except estemos. In all the other forms, the accent goes over the last e. Saber has the core SEP followed by as, amos, ais, on, and it follows the regular rules after the SEP is applied. Stem changing rules. For AR and ER verbs, the stem changers look like a boot. For AR and ER verbs, there is a constant pattern of stem change. The forms in tan have stem changers, and the forms in purple do not have any stem changers. For IR verbs, however, there are stem changers in all forms, but the forms in brown have an odd pattern. For AR and ER verbs, always think of the boot. An example of an AR stem changer includes encontrar. In this AR verb, the O changes to a UE. Encuentre, encuentres, encuentre, encontremos, encontrais, encuentren. Notice how encontremos and encontrais maintain the O, while the rest of the forms change to UE. The regular stem change for encontrar changes from O to UE in the present tense and follows those same rules when applied here. For ER verbs, they follow the same rules as the AR verbs. For example, querer has the stem change E to IE. Notice how in queramos and querais still contain an E and do not have an IE. Stem changing rules for IR verbs. There are stem changers in all forms, but there are only regular stem changers inside of the boot. Outside of the boot, the stem changer in an IR verb always goes from E to I and O to U. In the verb preferir, the regular stem change is an E to IE. Now look closely at preferamos and preferais, which are in brown. These two forms take the E in preferir and change it directly to an I, while the other forms change the E to an IE. This is an example of an IR stem changer that changes from E to I when outside the boot. Dormir is an example of an IR stem changer that changes from O to U instead of O to UE. Dormamos and dormais represent the odd forms of the verb when the rule of O to U is applied.
Okay, let's practice some subjunctive verbs. Write them down as I go along. Let's try yo despertarse. So you take the present yo form of despertarse, which is despierto, and take the opposite ending. So change despertar to desperte and add the IE, giving you me despierte. Next, let's try nosotros and bailar. So applying the same technique, take the present nosotros form of bailar, which is bailamos, then swap the ending on bailamos, so your new answer is bailemos. And here are the others.
Here's some practice to help you distinguish between the subjunctive, indicative, and infinitive forms. Number 1. Es preciso que tú do la tarea. The trigger phrase here is preciso que. Since preciso que is one of the weirdo verbs, the verb must be in the subjunctive form, so the answer is hagas. Number 2. Es importante que ellos eat la cena. The trigger phrase here is importante que. This is also a weirdo verb phrase, so the verb following must be subjunctive, or coman. Number 3. Creo que el concierto starts a las 3. The trigger phrase here is creo que. However, this verb phrase is not one of the weirdo verbs, so the verb will be in the indicative form, making the answer empieza. Number 4. ¿Piensas que nosotros will win el partido? The trigger phrase here is piensas que. If piensas que were not within a question, it would require the indicative form, but since it is in a question, you are adding doubt to the sentence, and you must put the verb in the subjunctive form, or ganemos. Number 5. Tenemos que talk in español. The verb phrase tenemos que is the trigger phrase here. Anytime you have the verb tener plus que, it requires a verb in the infinitive to follow, so the answer is hablar. Number 6. No dudo que ella will get an A in the class. The trigger phrase here is no dudo que. Dudo que on its own would mean that there is doubt in the sentence requiring the subjunctive form, but since it is no dudo que, you have removed the doubt, making the answer indicative or saca. Number 7. Mi mejor amiga quiere return ahora. The verb quiere is the trigger word here. Since there is no change in subject throughout the sentence, there is no need for the subjunctive form. Also, since the verb quiere is conjugated, the verb following must be an infinitive, so the answer is volver. And number 8. Espero que no llover mañana. The trigger phrase here is espero que. Since this is a weirdo verb phrase, the verb following must be in the subjunctive form, so the answer is llueva.
Here is some more guided practice to further help you choose between subjunctive, indicative, and infinitive. Follow along as I explain each one. Numero 1. Ojalá que ellos will have fun. We know that this is subjunctive because of ojalá que. The verb to have fun is divertirse, so the answer is ojalá que ellos se diviertan. Numero 2. Tememos que la tormenta will destroy nuestra casa. Because this sentence contains a weirdo verb phrase, temer que, the conjugation will be subjunctive. To destroy is destruir, and therefore the answer is tememos que la tormenta destruya nuestra casa. Numero 3. Creo que el estudiante gets a good grade in el proyecto de español. Creo que is not a weirdo verb phrase, so the answer will be indicative. The verb to get a good grade is sacar una buena nota, and when conjugated, the final answer is creo que el estudiante saca una buena nota en el proyecto de español. Número 4. ¿Estáis seguro que tus amigos y tú have done la tarea? Although this sentence contains estáis seguro que, which is not a weirdo verb phrase, the fact that it is in the form of a question causes it to be subjunctive. Have done is haber plus hecho, making the final answer ¿estáis seguro que tus amigos y tú hayáis hecho la tarea when conjugated? Número 5. Preferimos to stay in casa. This does not have a verb followed by que, and therefore is neither subjunctive nor indicative, making the verb to stay, or quedarse, infinitive. However, since it is a reflexive verb, remember to change the se accordingly, making the answer preferimos quedarnos en casa. Now I have a surprise quiz to test your knowledge from the guided practice. Pause this as you write down the answers. The answer to número 1 is ellos piensan que tú y yo estamos equivocados sobre el proyecto. This is because phrases like pensar que and creer que are always indicative unless when used as a question or in a negative way, as in no pensar que or no creer que. The answer to número 2 is creéis que haya otro examen antes el verano. As explained, creer que is indicative when used positively or as a statement. Therefore, the answer is subjunctive because creer que is in the form of a question. Lastly, the answer to número 3 is tenemos que limpiar nuestros dormitorios para mañana. This is because tener que always indicates an infinitive verb following, so limpiar remains as is.
Now it's time for the sorpresa. take some time to write down your answers. Okay, here are the answers. Number 1 is me la digas. Because pronouns aren't connected, the pronouns go on the front. And it's subjunctive because there's a weirdo verb and a K. The seer is irregular, so it goes from dis to dig, or des to dig. Number 2, os sepies. With the reflexive verb, the os goes in front. And there's a weirdo verb and a K, so it is subjunctive. AR in the vos otros form is ace. So you get os sepies. Number 3, necesitas. When you have a weirdo verb and the word have before the verb. Dude, it's not. Alright. Because the weirdo verb is. You have to use present perfect subjunctive. Hacer is irregular. Or 4, aya ho. When you have a weirdo verb and the word have before the verb, you have to use the present perfect subjunctive. Hacer is irregular, so it doesn't. So it goes to ho, and then use aya for hacer. Number 5. Because the weirdo verb is tango K, the answer needs to be infinitive, so you get buscar.